Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Mirafiz bin Amizali. My student number is 2019292052, and today I'm going to do ladder diagram for Labsheet number 2. Okay, first we are going to read the question. Okay, before exporting the local fruits to the international market, there are some procedures which are needed to be compiled, particularly pest control. In Z product SDM Berhad, they do the fruit packing by inserting the fresh fruits in the small container and run it on the conveyor. The conveyor will be started when the operator activates push button A and B. The container will be flowed under the pest control station, which consists of pest control material, spray unit and filtered water spray unit. The pest control material will be sprayed on the fruits for 15 seconds and continued cleaning process by activating the filtered water spray unit for 25 seconds. Both process should be done for 2 times repeatedly. The last process is to desiccate the fruits. The container will be flowed through the desiccating station for 5 seconds, and the process is kept repeating until the system stops. Okay, first is making 2 push button to start the conveyor. So we need to make push button A and push button B. So for push button A is input X0, and for push button B is input X1, and the output will be R1. And then we make the memory that is inputting R1. Okay, and then the next line we input R1. That will start the conveyor, that is Y1. So we put output Y1. After the conveyor start, it will stop at the pest control spraying unit. So the sensor, that is X3, input X3, will detect the box and stop the conveyor. So we need to put and not put and not X3. Then the sensor will turn on the pest control spraying unit, that will be Y2. So output Y2. After that, the sensor X3 will turn on the timer. The timer will be set to 15 seconds. So input X3, the X sensor, and then the timer, Y1, for 15 seconds. Means that for 15 seconds the conveyor will stop and the pest control spraying unit will spray the fruit for 15 seconds. After 15 seconds, it will stop. After that, T1 will turn on the water spraying unit. So input T1, and the output will be Y3, that is the water spraying unit. So it will also have a timer for the water spraying unit to spray the fruit, and the timer will be set to 15 seconds. So T1, input T1, and then timer TMY, timer number 2 for 25 seconds.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Putra Farizi Azim bin Azman, and I will continue the PLC simulation. And I will make a few changes in this simulation. As we all know, XO and X1 is push button A and push button B, and R1, and I will notate it as out, R0, which is relay, and as you can see, push button XO and push button X1, and RO. RO is where we want to keep the data to become 1. So we must put this, change this into RO also. R0. So this process is called latching, where we want to make push button A and push button B become one process and become one flow. So we change R1 to we make a new node which is R0, and and next R0, when R0 is open, Y1, which is we noted as Y0, Y0, which is, as we all know, Y0 is conveyor. And then after conveyor, RO is turned on, then conveyor will move. When the conveyor will move, and then there is sensor that can detect the box, which is we noted it as X2. So after it detects, we want to make the conveyor stop, so we must put not X2 here as a way to cut the circuit from flowing, so the conveyor will be stopped. Next, as you can see, X2 will be turned on, and Y1, we will note this as Y1, which is a pest control spray.
Okay,
as you can see
after
in the question,
timer 2, which is
pest
25
control
seconds
spray unit,
done, the T2 will activate it and will
then
make this
the
process
pest
at
control
Y2
at the
stop.
same time,
And the T2 will go to the counter 101, which is
X2 will turn
we need to
on
repeat this
the
process
timer.
for 2 times. And
As you can see, the
we
timer
just done with the
is timer
first
1,
process, and
and
we will repeat
K
that.
is
And this is
constant
what we call as a loop process.
decimal,
And
which is suitable
will
because
start
the number
again
they
at
we
Y1,
want to take
which is the
is
pest
15.
control
After that,
spray,
the pest
and
control
then we
will
go
spray
back to the
about
Y2, which
15
is
seconds,
water spray,
and then T1 will be
that
turned on.
process will be done with
And
the 2 times.
We must
After
stop
that, it will
the
go to X3,
the pest
and when we
control
open
from
the
moving,
X3 here,
which
you
is
can
we
see
must
that
add here
the
not
X3 will make the process
T1.
Y3 activated, which is desiccating process. And for this
because
process,
we
it
want to
needs
stop
about 5
the pest
seconds
control
only for
after
the process to be
15
done.
seconds.
And then
After pest control,
after we
is
done
stopped,
with the process
T1
X3 here,
we will
and we
continue,
can go to the
and the
input
Y2,
X4.
we noted
And
Y2,
if we open the input X4 here, as we can see,
the Y2
we
which
will
is,
make the
as
R1
we can see,
to
the water
to
spray
activate.
unit is the
And we can
next
see
process
R1 is
for
actually
the simulation.
the process that
And
will
we
make
noted as
all this simulation stop.
water
And
spray.
you can see here, because at the first line here, when X0 is activated
water spray will
and
be turned
X1
on.
is activated,
And then what
But
we will do,
when we activated the
we must
X4,
put
the
a
R1
timer
will
also.
activated. So here R1
Here,
not
timer, and
will
as you can
stop
see in the
this
question, it
process
says that
and
we
will make
must
the R0 is
the water
not
sprayer unit
turn
will
on.
be
So
on
if the R0
for
is not turned
25
on,
seconds.
the
So
conveyor
we
will
noted
not
K
started
as
to
a
move, and
decimal constant,
all of this process
and
will not be done.
the seconds is 25 seconds as the question 1. And then what we must do is we put T2 which is tmy2 is equal to t2, and we must put, for the question says that it must be done for 2 times, so it means that we must put counter, which is it will count the process until 2 times and it will proceed this process. So we must put the, and we pick ct counter, and as we all know, counter will be start from 101, and we will choose decimal constant, which is k, and the number of counter we want is 2 times, so it will be like this, 2 times. After 2 times, what we will need to do is we must make a few changes in these steps, which is if we want to add some rung, which is a space, and we must put here is C101 right here, and we make some, as you all know, this we put here and here, here and here. And this process also known as OR. This is because we want to move on, because after 2 times the conveyor belt will move again and will be stopped at the desiccating unit. So what we must do is we must put OR here, because after it complete 2 times pest control and water for 2 times, the conveyor unit will be turned on, as we mentioned here, because we put here is so C101, so the conveyor unit will be moved on. After that, we must make a new sensor, which is the sensor to detect the box of the fruit when it reach this desiccating unit. So we must put a new input, which is, we noted it as x3, and the output that will become is y3, which is, as we see, desiccating unit, so we mention it as desiccating unit. So it is called desiccating. At the same time, what we must do is we must put a new node up here, because why? We want to make the conveyor stop, so we must put a new node here after the CO1, because it is after the process of C010, which is the counter. So we add a new node, which is node x3, enter as a new node here. So this will make sure that the conveyor stop when it detects the box. Before that, I forgot to mention that the water spray also will be stopped, so we must put a node to stop the water spray when T2 is launching, which is after the water spray done for 25 seconds. So we put here new node T2. After desiccating, we move on. We put input x3, which is at the same time when it turn on. The question says that the desiccating station will be turned on for 5 seconds. So we might put here a new timer, TMY also, timer 3, the third timer, and K for 5 seconds. And the next steps is we must make sure that we have a button to turn off the whole system. So what we must do is we add a new input, which is we noted it as X4, and it will make an output of R1, which is R1 is known as the button where we want to stop the whole process, which is we must go up and put it here. So we must put not R1 here. So when we turn on the R1, it will cut the whole process. And also do not forget, after the desiccating is turned on for 5 seconds, and the conveyor will continue to move for the next boxes process. So we must put up here the timer what? The timer 3, T3. This means that after 5 seconds, the T3 will be turned on and the conveyor will move again and continue the whole process. And do not forget to set the button reset for the counter, which is, as we all know, X2, to repeat the process. So we must put here the reset button, which is known as not X2. So this is the reset button, so it will reset from the pest control. Alright, as you can see, the process want the system to run for 2 times, and then after that it will go through the next process. So we must make a loop inside of this, which is where the pest control and the water spray will be looping, which is will be flow for 2 times. So what we must do, you see here the T2 node we must delete, and we put the T2 node here because we want to make the loop to begin at the pest control. So that's why we put it there. So we put it here, T2 node. Right. Next, the pest control and the water spray process we done for 2 times, and the counter will be start. But we must make the pest control looping stop. So we must put a new node, which is counter 101 node, to make sure that when the counter is turned on, the pest control and the water spray will be turned off. So we must put it here. C101 here, and put the node here, C101, and we must put it also here to make it stop from process. C101. Okay, that's all from me, and next we will move on to the simulation. My friend Shahrin will be presenting to you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Hi. Now I will continue with the simulation here. As you can see here, we have input X0, X1, X2, X3, and X4. Okay, for the button, which is X1 and X0, we need to turn on first, so the process can be started. As you can see here, when we start X0 and X1, the RO here will save the data, because RO here is a latching process. Okay, and we done here, after we turn on both button, the RO will make the conveyor, or we call Y0 here, to move. At first, this conveyor can move because there's no any obstacle that will stop the conveyor from moving. And after that, we will turn on the input X2, and when we open it, you can see here the conveyor stop. The reason the conveyor stop because when the box is reached at sensor X2, it will detect it and will make the X2 node here activated. So that's why the Y0, which is conveyor, stop. And at this process, we can see that the Y1, which is pest control spray, will activate it. So actually, the timer here for timer 1 is 15 seconds, but because it take too long for our video, so I make it less than 50 seconds, which is 5 seconds only for the simulation. So when it's done with the pest control spray for about 15 seconds, it will move to the T1 will activated, and it will make the T1 node stop the process of Y1 or pest control sprayer. After that, the Y2 or water spray will activated, and it will spray the box for about 25 seconds. But as same as the pest control here, I will make it like a short time because we need to save time for our video. Okay, after the timer 2, which is 25 seconds, is done, the T2 will activate it and will make this process at Y2 stop, and the T2 will go to the counter 101, which is we need to repeat this process for 2 times. And we just done with the first process, and we will repeat that, and this is what we call as a loop process. And it will start again at Y1, which is the pest control spray, and then we go back to the Y2, which is water spray, and then that process will be done with the 2 times. After that, it will go to X3, and when we open the X3 here, you can see that the X3 will make the process Y3 activated, which is desiccating process. And for this process, it need about 5 seconds only for the process to be done. And then after we done with the process X3 here, and we can go to the input X4, and if we open the input X4 here, as we can see, we will make the R1 to activate it, and we can see R1 is actually the process that will make all this simulation stop. And you can see here, because at the first line here, when X0 is activated and X1 is activated, but when we activated the X4, the R1 will activate it. So here R1 node will stop this process and will make the R0 is not turned on. So if the R0 is not turned on, the conveyor will not started to move, and all of this process will not be done.